Hey everybody, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. This is, as you can imagine, a video on signaling. I did mess around with signaling a little bit at the end of my N scale layout before I had to take it down. So I remember some parts about signaling, but it very quickly left my brain. So I had to kind of start from scratch again. And it's starting to come back to me now, but it was many months before I started getting back into it. So I did purchase some of these signal masts. These are the Atlas, also known as, the old company was BLMA or BMLA. I forgot which way they organized the letters there. But I always liked them when I was in N scale. I was always very envious of the HO people that they had so many choices and they had these gorgeous signals that I was not able to get for N scale. So here I am with my HO scale layout, taking full advantage of the situation. And the only problem is that I was a minute too late, because when these first came out, these signals, they seem to have flown off the shelves right away. Now it's really hard to find them. So I've been searching deep into eBay and everything else, and I finally hit a few of them at a reasonable price, because the other thing is people know that you can't get these anymore, or at least for right now. And so they're charging ridiculous prices for even just a single-headed signal like this. I mean, I've seen these go for like $125 for one, which is, that's just not even fair. So this one cost me about 35 bucks, which I think is reasonable for what it is and for the details and, you know, the quality. So I bought a few of these. The only problem is that it seems like the right-handed ones are more common, because I can't find any of them. I've only been able to find left-handed ones. That's why you see the ladder on the left side, because as you can imagine, you don't want the ladder on the track side. So I am looking for some right-handed ones. That's why I have this test mask here. I can't find any. I ordered 2 left hands like this, and I'm trying to find a double aspect or a double head signal just like that one for the other side. So I have another. This is going to represent the signal that's going to go on that side. So luckily I have these that I can mess around with and I can test. But my goal basically is to have all my signaling completed before I get into ballasting and, you know, scenery, like heavy scenery, and just locking things into place, because I want to make sure all these things are not only working properly, but also set up for operation sessions where they can be controlled from a dispatcher. And also that they actually, like, they have something to be placed on. Because I don't want to get all the scenery done and then realize I don't have anything solid to place these, you know, signals on. So I'm kind of just messing around with that and trying to figure it all out before it's too late. And then it's 10 times the work to get it to work. So this is the first situation that I'm working on right now, which is a simple sighting. You have the main line coming out of the tunnel here, and then you're either going to go into the main track, which is this one here, or you're going to go into the divergent track, which is this one here, or the siding. And so the recommended situation with signaling is that you have a double aspect signal on the main line side facing that way. So as the locomotives are coming this way, they can see where they need to go. And that's why, you know, there's 2 options. So that's why you need 2 heads. And then in this direction, you want the single-headed masts. You know, they could be searchlights or they could be three light aspects. But you want to face them this way, because if the train's on this track going that way, it needs to know there's only one choice, either stop or go. But you can't jump from this track to that track. So that's why there's only one head that's really necessary. And same thing here. When you're in that track, that light is going to tell you, or that signal is going to tell you whether you can go or stop, because there's only one option. So more about that if you look up some signaling videos. I've been studying them like crazy, and there's a lot of different scenarios. I'm going with the NS 2008 method or system, I guess you can call it, which is what was established by Norfolk Southern in 2008, I'm assuming. And they've kind of stuck with that. And I'm running a lot of NS anyway. So, you know, a lot of that, the situations there are similar to this. Theoretically, there should be a red light that's always on the bottom on a separate light, or maybe even just another set of lights on the bottom for every post, from what I understand, just to show that the signal is actually working and that it's not acting up. It's almost like a safety feature. But for this, you know, I'm just trying to keep it simple. Anyways, so I have this all running through something called the Digitrax SE8C, which is a control board, along with the rest of all my block detection and everything that's here. The SE8C is this board right here, where the ribbon's coming out of. And as you can see, I'm only working with one zone right now because that's all I got hooked up. But you have 8 inputs, which are right here. You have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8. And even though they say you can control 32 lights, what they mean is, I think you can control 32 lights, not 32 signals, because each signal has either a, 3 light aspect, or a 6, meaning 3 and 3, or that kind of thing. So I think you really have to measure it by lights rather than signals, because I just ate up basically that entire first driver with, 3 signals. So, it's a little tricky the way they worded that, but whatever. It's working beautifully. And so that speaks not only to the signals, but it also speaks to the LocoNet, which is the wire that's coming off the top here. I gotta put this a little bit more securely somewhere else. But the LocoNet allows for everything here: my block detection, my zoning, my district power, and obviously the the command station, and all the turnouts that are being controlled by these stationary decoders are all talking back and forth to everything else. And like I said, the SE8C. So with that said, what I've done is that I've not only connected the signals to them, the way they're connected is through these 10-wire ribbons that come with Digitrax, but you can get this stuff cheap, online. It doesn't have to be this. It's just that, this coloring helps you kind of keep everything in order. And the ribbon is one circuit. So in other words, it's coming from the SE8C going into the 2-aspect signal, which is this here. And then from there it continues. It's not like a separate wire. It continues to this signal and then continues to this signal, or rather this signal and then that signal. Not that it matters. These two could be interchanged either way. And the way the computer recognizes that it's facing that way or this way, or that it's this kind of aspect or this kind of aspect, is the way you plug in the wires. So these are just, you just pull them out and they plug right into this 10-pin receiver here. So if I flip this the other way around, it's reversing the order of all the wires here. So it's sending a different lighting signal to everything else. As you can imagine, you're just flipping everything. So it's no longer that orientation for those lights. So that took a minute to kind of figure out, but I finally got it. But it's very simple with this system to kind of just plug it in. The only thing I don't like is that this wire, it's kind of like, it's hard to hide. So it gets a little sloppy, in the layout or whatever. Not that that's any cleaner right there, but I do have to clean all that up and make it neater. But definitely an easy way to get started. You know, maybe in the future I'll use a different system, but it seems like most people that are getting into signaling at first use the Digitrax, and plus everything else that I use is Digitrax anyway. So it's I'm just trying to keep things consistent. Okay, next. So in order to control those, you can either just take a throttle. Sorry about my dogs, they're going crazy as usual. And I hope they're going crazy because my track just arrived, which I've been waiting for 6 or 7 months. But anyways, so this is just a regular Digitrax throttle. So if you input the number of the switch, which is you know, the address, I should say, that's actually given to each mast, it should change the lights. So if I hit the switch right here, and then I find the address, which in this case, the default for some of these are, I think it's 263 is one of them. Once you close or throw right here, it'll change. So as you can see, I'm changing that by just throwing and closing. So then if I go to 264, what's going to happen, each signal has 2 addresses that you can throw or close. So one is to control the green and the red, and the other one, so 264 is probably what it is. 264 is used to control the yellow light, and it's either going to be a solid light or a blinking yellow light. So as you can see, if I put it on closed, for this situation, it's giving me a blinking yellow light. And if I put it on throw, it gives me just a solid yellow. And so, you know, that would be, so that's address 263 and 264. This one is probably going to be 265 and 266. So this one is probably going to be 262 and 261 because this one always goes first, then this one, or, you know, something like that. So let me go back to this, 263. And I'm just trying to get this back to red, so there it is. Okay, so that's one way to control them manually. Now that's, I don't know if that's of any use for, at least for me, because I'm not going to be controlling my own signals manually like that with a throttle. So what my goal is to control everything from a dispatcher panel, such as this, which I've been building, you know, for the last few months. So this is JMRI software. I think it's the latest version, 4 point something. I forget what the actual extension is, but what I have here is basically most of the turnouts are already being controlled through JMRI. The situation we're looking at here is right in this area here. So this is where that tunnel is, right under the staircase, and the locomotive's coming this way. This signal is the one that's actually by itself on the left side here, right there. And then that is the siding. So that signal is actually on this side because that's the way I mapped it out. So if you can imagine, this one will be the other one. They're kind of flipped around. So this guy is your main line, and it looks like it's on the inside, but over here, it's actually on the outside. So it would be this guy. So this is the main line. That's the siding. And this would have been on the other side. Actually, I'm putting it way on the other side. I'm putting it before the tunnel on the opposite side because the conductor has to know, or the engineer, sorry, has to know what to do before he or she gets into the tunnel. You can't just throw a signal right at the opening right before the signal and then expect them to react. So that signal is going on the other side eventually. But right now I just have them here so I can see them all and so I can test them. So the way JMRI works is not my favorite, but I will eventually be using a program that piggybacks off of JMRI for a dispatcher situation, which is a lot more realistic, and it's a lot more user-friendly, and it's more, you have more options. The way JMRI has it set up right now, and it's not the only way you could do it, but it's got it set up for, I think, what's called automatic block signaling, or ABS. And what happens with that is that it's detecting where the turnout is, whether it's closed or open. And it's also working off of block detection. So it knows where the train is. And because of that, it can tell the signals where it needs to go and what your options are automatically. That's why I think they call it automatic block signaling. So right now, the locomotive that you saw back there, the D&H, is sitting right in this section, which is right under the stairs. And it's about to come into this segment here, which is a separate block. I've created a separate block here so that it'll detect when it gets in there. And then supposedly it's supposed to go to the next block, which would be past this turnout here and there. So the software is telling the signals that, hey, if you have a locomotive here and it has a green command, theoretically you can go in this direction without any problems. You know, the top head tells you that you have a clear, which means you can go straight on the main without any restrictions, really. And then it'll continue through. That's why you have another green here, because this turnout is also closed, and it's allowing for the locomotive to keep going straight. Now, this signal, well, let me back up. This signal is the opposite of this signal. But because the turnout is closed here, this signal is saying, hey, if you want a train to go in this direction, that's totally fine, because this block is still available. So this train could be waiting here, and it has a choice to either go that way or this way. But you can pull up a train up to this block and stop at this signal, which is a red, and then you would have two trains basically facing each other, which means that this train would have to switch the turnout and then go into the siding so that this other train can continue in that direction. So that's why it's showing yellow on top, because it's saying, hey, you can go in the main line, but you have to be careful because there's a train about to be right ahead of you. And because it's supposed to, theoretically, the real answer is because you know that there's a red signal coming up, so you have to be prepared to stop. That's really what it means. So the red on the bottom indicates that you can't go to the siding because the turnout is not switched. And that's why it's red. So now let's go into the other signals that I didn't discuss yet. So these are facing the main lines. So these two are facing the main line over here, and these two are facing the main line over here. So the only way that these can change is if there is some kind of signal coming from the turnout or from the block detection, if there's something in this track or in this track. So watch what happens when I switch this turnout here. So what I did here is I went into the diverging track with the turnout, which flipped this to red over yellow. Now what that means in signal world is that the bottom head always tells you what you could do with the diverging route. So it's telling you, hey, you can go to onto the diverging route, but be prepared to stop because you have a red signal about coming up soon after. And that's why that's red. Oops, I just turned it. Okay, so see what happened? I just turned that yellow because you can change the color by just clicking on it. And see how this went to green? So, sorry, my battery's running low, so I'm going to try to hurry up here. So now it's telling you, well, if there's a yellow here, then you can proceed at a faster speed because eventually this is going to be clear. Now, you know, obviously this would have never changed if I didn't touch it, so I'm going to put it back to where it was. which is red. And that, as you can see, goes back to yellow. So that's if a train's going this way. Now, the train's got to stop here, obviously, because it's got nowhere to go, right? The turnout is dead. So you could pull a train to the siding, and this train that's over here could go straight, but it still has to be careful because you have a red signal here. That's why it's yellow on the top head. So watch what happens when I turn this, when I switch that turnout. Now the top head here goes to red because it can't go forward, right? You just set the route to the diverging route. But it's also got a red on the bottom head because it knows, the logic knows that there's a green here and a green here. So that means that this train is definitely going into the siding. So there's no way that this train can go into the same siding without smashing into it or without having to back up. So this is smart enough to figure out that, hey, you can't, somebody's going to come into the siding and you can't go in. And it knows that because there's a locomotive sitting right here and there's no locomotive sitting here on this block. So we call that protecting the signal. So the software or the logic figures that out for you. Now, again, I'm sitting here babbling and I'm preaching like I know what I'm talking about, but this is all very new to me still. So if I'm making mistakes along the way, I do apologize. But I think I have a pretty basic understanding of how that works now. Hopefully I'm right so far. Okay, so this allows me to go into the siding and continue because I have an open route here. If there was a train in here, it couldn't go this way because there's a red signal, and it couldn't go that way because there's another red signal. So that's trapped in here until I give it some kind of access. If for some reason this locomotive clears out of here and this becomes free, what's going to happen is this lower head is going to turn probably to yellow because it's going to recognize that there's a red signal here. So it's going to say, well, you can go into this turnout, but then you got to be prepared to stop. And that's basically the gist of it. Now, I did want to say something. The 3 lights that I have set up right now are right here. But on the other side of the signal, I don't have any lights set up. Let me just walk you over there real quick. This is the other side. This is the other siding point right here. So you can see there's no lights here, but I have lights on the panel. And you're going to say, well, how did you do that? Well, there's something called virtual signaling that is part of JMRI. Now, why would you need virtual signaling? Well, the software doesn't know that you don't have signals over here or that you do have signals over there until you put them in. So what I did is I tricked, basically you're tricking the system by including these signals as if they were there, but there's no actual signals sitting there physically. And you need that in order to complete the logic for this side. Otherwise, this won't know what to do. So that's why I had to add those. I'll probably add virtual signals to everything until I start replacing them with actual signals. And this is the part that I'm a little bit, it's tricky. You definitely have to do your homework before you start doing this because it's not something you can just plug and play and expect them to work correctly. And in fact, I got really twisted up before, and I have a little experience on this stuff already with my N-scale stuff. But anyways, so that's basically it. Now, what I want to show you is what happens when I move the locomotive. So we're going to go ahead and flip this back to the main line. And as you can see, the top, which used to be green, is now yellow. Why? Because it's telling you you can proceed, but be careful because you're going to have to stop at this red signal here, and there's no open route there. Now, if there was a train here, you could still move in this direction because the turnout is, set up for diverging. So that's why you have a green here, so you can just have a clear out of here. If it was pointing in this direction, obviously you'd have a red here because you can't go anywhere. So this is all being figured out by the computer and the SEHC along with JMRI. So watch. So I'm going to clear this to the main. And as you can see, this went to red like it originally was. And this went to green because now you have a clear path from here, which is where the locomotive is. So it's going to take that clear And it's going to go right through because it has a clear over here as well. So the other part of this is that when you move a locomotive past a light, a signal or a block, theoretically, anything that's green or yellow should drop down to red. And that's a safety thing. So you don't have anything happening behind you that could potentially, hit you from the back. So we're going to move that locomotive forward from this block, which is a tunnel, into the main line, which is right in front of me. And you're going to see that this signal should drop to red. Now, what happens normally is all signals drop to red once it enters, and nothing else happens until the dispatcher decides to turn something green or yellow. So in this situation, oh, by the way, that's called CTC. And in this situation with the ABS, with automatic block detection, what happens is once the locomotive crosses and this drops, it should also give you options of other stuff that can happen with your locomotive in that particular block. So if I remember correctly, since I'm going from this block to this block, what's going to happen is, yes, this is going to drop to red like it should, but then this is going to turn green. Why? Because if I decide to go in the opposite direction, I can. I'm clear. So let's see if that's true. So here, this is a real scenario here. There is a clear signal on the double aspect that, again, would be on that side. So that train would have been seeing that on the other side of the mountain. And as it moves forward, it should knock it down as soon as it goes into the main line, which is right here. Now, watch how those are red right now, but they're going to change. So let's see what happens. Move this forward. And the block is basically at the signal. So as soon as I cross that right there, you can see that all of a sudden that went to red. It dropped like it should. And this became green. Why? Because now if I decide to go the other way, I have a clear path. But you see now that goes to red and this goes to green. That's why they call that automatic block detection. So, I'm sorry. Let me just go back again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the turnout here. So let's say the dispatcher decides, well, you're going to go into the diverging, you're going to take the siding. Now it's telling me, well, you can't go straight. That's why it's red. But you can go into the siding carefully because there's going to be a red signal up ahead. So I think they call that a medium approach or an approach. I forget what the actual terminology is. I got to still do my homework on that. So now in the real world, you see it right there. So same situation. This is the signal that will be on the other side of the tunnel. And it's telling you that you can approach the main line. But watch what happens when I actually go into that block. I'm sorry, not the main line, the siding. Watch what happens when I go into the siding. Now the siding turns green and this turned red again. So that dropped and so on. So now if I want to go, like I did before, now the opposite is going to happen. Right there. Oops. So that went to yellow again, the way it was, and that went to red. So basically, this detected the block, but this detected the switch or the turnout. And that's basically the gist of it. I mean, this is a very basic description of what I'm doing here. It's going to get more complicated, especially when I have signals in between signals. So there's a good possibility, since this siding is very long, that I might want to throw a signal somewhere in the middle here before I exit all the way over there. Or sometimes you need a signal between runs, like very long runs. So this is not very long, but let's say that from here to there, it was like 400 miles. You have what they call signals in between, I forgot the actual term, that help you to figure out what's going to be coming ahead. So you might have a green and then a yellow and then a red, because that tells you to slow down as you get closer to the red, and so on and so forth. But that's basically what's happening. I threw the other signal up here for now, but I don't have a ribbon that's long enough to reach here yet, so eventually it will be wired. But I have to run it from, you know, I have to run it through here all the way around and to there. So that's a long run. I have to go buy some wire. Miles of it, probably. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to show you that here, where the tunnel entrance is for this mountain here, the signal will probably be, I don't even want to put it that close to the entrance of the mountain, even though I might, but I think I might put it over here somewhere. And the reason for that is because there's going to be a road that comes from behind the mountain here that crosses here and then makes its way down before it goes into here where this road is. That goes across the CSX line and there. So there's really no interruption as far as blocks go until that point right there. So I have this whole stretch here to make a block and then put a signal here to stop the train before the crossing. Why? Because if I put the signal over there, then you're going to have the train stuck in the crossing if it needs to stop. So it's more realistic that the train would stop either past the road crossing or before it, unless you don't have a choice. But in this case, I do have a choice. So even though I might have multiple blocks for this big stretch, just for detection, I might have, well, maybe I'll even have a signal here just to always show green, you know, or something, so that I can stop the train and still have a big train sitting here if I want to. I could have like whatever, 45, 50 cars here before the road. And then once I get my clear, then the whole train can go past this, because remember, it's clear into the siding or the main. So I can go past all this, and then it can either go into the siding or the main here, but now it'll be completely out of the way of the road over there. And I'm gonna have another road crossing here. So that'll be another place where, you know, I probably have to put the signal a little bit further back here so the road can be used while the train is waiting to go into that section over there. So anyways, that's, you know, there's a lot of planning that's still going on in my head, and I'm trying to figure all that stuff out before I just go crazy with scenery and all that stuff. So as you can see, I have done some, but that's just to get an idea of like how things are going to fit. And I had to figure out the tunnel, but I'm leaving myself plenty of access, so I can still go into the tunnel with my hand, and I can still go back there to do any wiring and so on and so forth. So anyways, so that's where I'm at. I guess this is theoretically an update, but it's really just about the signaling. So I'll do another update later on, you know, for the entire layout. All right, thanks for watching.